3 days away from 2014 of the making of this video, and I'm just going to do a bit of a recap of where we are in the world and kind of the progression now. For those of you who might be tuning in for the very first time, basically what I've been doing, I guess 2011 and on, is WW3 Updates. Basically what I've been doing is connecting dots for people just so they can kind of get a bigger picture of the chess game that is being played out before our eyes. What I'm not doing is saying it's going to be at this date and time because of this, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that. That's the thing. But what I do say is that the recipe is there. We just have to turn on the stove. We are living in some pretty crazy times. So a little background of who I am. Well, I'm just a guy, and I've always been kind of fascinated with military history, military equipment, that type of thing. I don't have it. I'm not I've never served, but like that. I'm a Canadian, just for those of you who don't know. Most of you already know, but that follow my channel, but those of you who don't know. And what I do is try to kind of get people into the mind frame of what's really going on in the world. There's a couple of things that I'd like to point out first. Let's say you had cancer. If you had cancer, you would probably go to the doctor, as scary as it would be, and you would seek treatment. You would do everything tooth and nail to try to get rid of that cancer. You would have to, summon up some courage, some bravery. You would definitely, have to endure some mental anguish on top of that, because it's a scary thing. So if we're looking at it like that, well, nuclear weapons, on the other hand, exactly why would people, be so kind of blind to what's really going on in the world? Well, it's the sum of all fears, so to speak, right? It's the, if you look at every great war in the history, and there's been about probably 25,000 recorded wars in history, definitely not going to be the last, you know what I mean? But the difference now is, ever since the 1950s, late 1940s, 1945 and on, the world changed because warfare changed. Warfare now can go to the ultimate unthinkable level. Winner doesn't take all. It's M.A.D, mutually assured destruction. Whereas, World War I, World War II, they're, so-called arguably winners and losers. I think in war, everybody loses. So it should be avoided at all cost. And the problem is we have a handful of people that dictate whether we should launch missiles at each other, which is, it's definitely not a democracy. Again, and do we really trust these people? And the simple answer for me is no, because of the world we live in. We live in a very narcissistic, psychopathic world. And the problem with that, it's just a matter of time before, one of the things are used in anger again. I mean, people say, well, that could never happen, but it already has. This is the part, and this is the part about the history books where a lot of people just don't learn. History's so easily forgotten for most people. They usually, Nagasaki and Hiroshima are just, distant memories, yes, atomic bombs were dropped on those people. To give you an idea, for example, in Ottawa, Canada, the capital of Canada, there's about 300,000 people. Well, in Hiroshima, one bomb wiped out about 130,000 people. Just to kind of put that in. And that was a firecracker in comparison to some of the thermonuclear weapons we have today. I mean, hydrogen bombs, you have atom bombs, you have hydrogen bombs, and you have, basically high-yield thermonuclear weapons is basically, so some will be, for atomic bombs, for example, they tend to put more radiation in the air than destroy things. Atom bombs tend to destroy things, and hydrogen bombs tend to really destroy things, but they're all bad. They all leave behind, it's the, not so much the blast zone that you have to worry about. If it was just a blast zone, people could recover from that, but it's the idea of a weapon that, okay, one at a time is something that would be devastating enough to the planet, but when we look at it, thousands of them being launched here to here to here to here to, all over in the M.A.D scenario, the mutually assured destruction, where everybody when one country launches, everybody launches. A lot of people don't understand that. It's not, okay, well, this country's fighting that country and the rest will be safe. No. When China launches on the United States, they're also going to launch on Canada, they're also going to launch on Europe, they're also going to launch on anybody that is friendly to the United States, including probably Australia. They do that. Same with the United States. They will launch. If they launch on China, they launch on Russia. If they launch on Russia, they launch on China, and anybody that's sympathetic to their cause. India, Pakistan, that's just a powder keg waiting to go up. So you're probably thinking, well, that can't be true. It can't be true. But the thing is we'll just go with the amount of nuclear weapons that have already been detonated. Probably close to, that's declassified, is about 2,200. Yeah, 2,200 nuclear weapons since the 1950s have been detonated. And the only country that is actually denuclearized, okay, is this country right here, South Africa. That's the only country that actually got rid of its nuclear program. The rest are not getting rid of it. And everybody, there's a lot of new countries that want to join the club. Yes, Iran is trying to get a nuclear weapon. It's the calculation is there. They have to. Why? Everybody's threatening to kill them. So that's just a matter of time. They're more likely just going to buy it from these guys. They don't really get along, but money's kind of funny like that. In fact, Saudi Arabia, for example, there's a big history a lot of people don't know of when India got their nuclear weapon, they started, going around and, basically selling the technology to all kinds of people. And that's what they did. And, when you have, where is he here? South Korea, North Korea, they all smuggle. North Korea has been known to trade with Iran missile systems. One has the missile, the other one has the warhead, you know what I mean? So the missile technology, for example, for Iran is pretty good. They can reach 1,200-mile range with their missiles. That's not too bad. So the North Koreans, they have the warheads but no delivery system. So they do trade. A lot of people don't get that. And these are the most... This is a stable regime in the sense that it's not really lashing out at anybody. It hasn't attacked anybody in about 200 years directly, although it supports, indirectly supports Hezbollah and stuff like that, which God knows where they haven't attacked. North Korea, well, the dictator there now, who knows what he's up to. Again, wild cards, these people are psychopaths. They can't even see their own demise. That's what makes it so dangerous. So this is a reason why I make videos like this, is so that people are aware of it. You kind of can't cower down from it. You gotta kind of step up to the plate, because if not, you're allowing these, idiots here, there, and everywhere, facilitate thermonuclear war. And the recipe's there. A lot of people don't realize right now we're actually in a new Cold War. It's just the media isn't propagandizing it like it did in the 50s and 60s and 70s and even into the early 80s. The Soviet Union is still the Soviet Union. It's not Russia. They never collapsed. A lot of people say, but the people are still suffering from the collapse. Yeah, but the proof that they never collapsed is the fact that they've got 10 new divisions of Topol M, brand new submarine fleets. All they did is kind of what these people are doing right now, is basically just robbing the wealth from the people that had any little wealth whatsoever and putting it into massive weapons programs. And that's what they're doing. This country's been doing that for years. And think about the nuclear weapons and stuff that China has. They have about 240 weapons. Russia has about 10,000. And the United States something like between 65 and 8,500 that we know of. And recently, 3 nuclear weapons were moved without authorization. Nobody knows where they went. You got the nut job over here just kind of, can't wait to blow the snot balls out of these people. And they're going to, again, it's all these wild cards, and there's just no sanity in the world. And that's why I make these videos, is a lot of people don't realize, the hour is getting late. And unfortunately, we can't rely on our leaders to do the right thing because of the escalation. You have warship builds up. You have all kinds of stuff like that. So I have an awful lot to cover. What I do tell people is that I date my updates starting with the year of which I'm updating. I don't do it by month because I don't know. I mean, I might go 2 months without making a World War III update and all of a sudden make 3 in a row, 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row. It depends on what events are unfolding in the world. The longer it takes me to make an update, the better it is for humanity. The quicker I do the updates, it means things are progressing along. So I'm going to go back to the 1980s and stuff like that, where information was a lot easier to hide because we didn't have the internet and stuff like that. But I was still interested in what was going on in the world. And a really good eye-opener for me was, next to knowing what weapons were out there and stuff like that, was some documentaries. The best documentary to me to date, and I highly encourage people to go and watch, is Trinity and Beyond. It's one of the best nuclear documents of nuclear history, nuclear weapons on this planet. It covers so much. Another good one is Unsurvivable. The LaRouche Pack put it out last year, or the year before. It's a real good eye-opener on how the mechanics of it's going to go. And it just, again, it's the eye-opener that you realize that it is unsurvivable, because it'll, to destroy the planet will only take about a half an hour. Yeah. That's if they're taking their time. It'll only take, they have missiles that will be, in Washington, from Moscow to Washington in under 15 minutes. Think about that. Most of them will probably come over the North Pole, just to basically shorten the flight. But yeah, it's and the Russians have missiles that can be lost that are now being able to launch off a railroad. I mean, the technology isn't new, but they're upgrading the technology. That's the thing. What I need to stress is that they're upgrading the technology. It's not okay. Well, we have the weapons that have been around forever, which yes, there's that, but we're upgrading the technology. So why are they upgrading this technology? In such a frantic way. Again, mainstream will never cover this, and that's the sad part. And there's a lot of things. A lot of people say, well, I don't care which kind of camp you fall in, whether you believe that it's the elites want a war because of the economic disparity that's coming. They need a war to get into. Thing is yes, I agree that they have agreed on a war to take place, but they want to keep it away from the thermonuclear. That's the problem. Is how do you get into World War III without launching nukes? You know what I mean? Because you have too many wildcards to account for. You have the personnel that are manning the nukes. And I'm going to get into that. A new documentary I just watched a couple of nights ago from making this video. The nuclear codes for the Minuteman system was 12 zeros. So one guy who was having a really bad day could have actually initiated the launch codes for the entire arsenal of the United States. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. If there's ever a military coup of doomsday cults and they get into these silos, holy jeez. Same with Russia. Look at how many nuclear weapons have disappeared from Russia. And I'm going to get into the numbers in a short bit, but this is just kind of the idea of how they want to go about it. I mean, you're looking at power struggles. We're in a very interesting time in history where the whole world is going through a major change. Almost every one of these countries is in upheaval of some sort. All this is pretty much an upheaval. This is suffering a Great Depression. These guys are empire building like the Ming Dynasty. These guys are in a state of decay and collapse. We have the potential to become the world's biggest superpower, providing we're prepared to fight these guys. Yes, Canada will be fighting Russia in the future. Why? There's 30% of the oil reserves of the world is up here, and we're making this claim. Okay? Now, depending on how that claim comes out, the Russians have already started to gear up, old military bases in the Arctic. Think about it this way. If you're going to go up to the Arctic, okay, where not much has been happening for the last past since the NORAD days of the 1950s, okay? It's, pretty much been, the Russians shut down all kinds of bases. They weren't interested in saber rattling as much, which they do from time to time. They have a program where every couple of years they'll just send out Tu-95 bears and just, breach that airspace, breach this airspace, send a submarine or two off the coast of the United States just to let them know that we're there. And it's called saber rattling. They've been doing this for, forever, right after World War II. But the thing is that they closed down like all their mega bases that would, their early launch things for their bombers and stuff. Well, they're opening all those bases again. They closed these down years ago, and this is all recent. So why are they gearing that up now? Why is that a priority? I mean, it's a very expensive venture. You're pulling a lot of resources to put anything in the Arctic. You got to pull a lot of resources to do that. A lot of people don't realize what an icebreaker costs to run per day. We're talking millions of dollars a day to run some of these ships. Okay, millions of dollars. Okay, an aircraft carrier sitting in the harbor, like say the U.S. Ronald Reagan, for example, you're looking at $25 million a day for it to just sit there. You know what I mean? So like operational costs of these things is just ridiculous. So again, when you open up bases over here, there's got to be a reason. You're not going to do that just for the fun of it. You're doing that because there's going to be a resource war here. We're going to see it ramp up maybe in the next probably 4 to 5 years if we're still around in the waters. The same way China's kind of saber rattling with Japan right now over the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands. This whole region is really ready to explode. This region's a little more progressed, but the problem is these guys have much better weapons. The war will be much, much bigger. These guys, although a lot of people don't realize, China is in the process of invading India. And of course, India and Pakistan have been ready to kill each other forever. It's just, the way it is. So I'm going to leave it at that. So this is just kind of the the summary, or the beginning of the summary, because I got so much material to cover here just to recap what happened between 2013. But again, if you see some of my older videos that are, say, 2011 or 2012 World War III updates, don't hesitate to watch those, because sometimes it's nice to go back and use it as kind of a reference of, oh, okay, well, this happened back then, now we're seeing the fruits of it now, and why they're doing stuff. So just because the date might be a little bit older, it doesn't mean that stuff is not as relevant now. Some stuff fizzled out, lots of it has not fizzled out. And now there's so many videos I have, I can't name them all or list them all. You would have to, watch them at your own time. I don't know how many videos I have on that specific subject, but it'll start like 2012 World War III update, 2013 World War III update, and a lot of people that have been watching them have been saying, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I've called out much earlier than it's happened, and it has happened. So again, going back to the 1980s when I was a kid and looking at, the potentials of nuclear war and stuff like that, it's not like now. Now you find out, as soon as something happens, you find out almost straight away. And that's the scary part, is that it's happening much faster. Some of it is, the hand is being guided. Yes, there is a plan for war. Every time there is a major, that's how the elites hold on to power. The problem is now is that we're in the nuclear age. So it really makes it a lot harder to get into a war without it getting to a shooting war. Because I know there are going to be loyalists that are in charge of missile systems, and yes, they will launch. It's only a matter of time before you get a Kursk-like scenario, which they've already tried to do revisionist history on, which is kind of funny, because it's like, once people know, you have to spread forward. The Kursk was sunk by a Mark 48 torpedo over, now it's conspiracy, but it was already admitted. Now they've backtracked, so trying to get rid of any evidence that they said that. Again, they want you to forget that stuff so that you don't realize that if this was to happen on the surface, it would have easily triggered a thermonuclear war. The Russians would have definitely launched. Now the Oscar-class submarines is a missile destroyer. It's a boat destroyer, but but it could have sparked off World War III right there. And there's a lot of times that we've been very, very close, which I'll cover in the next video. And the most recent is the Chinese aircraft carrier that was being saber-rattled by an American Aegis warship a couple of weeks ago from the making of this video, and it got intercepted by a Chinese warship. I mean, they were passed within a football field of each other. And these are big ships that don't maneuver that well at high speed, right? They maneuver well enough, but when we're talking something that's 2 football fields long, if they would have hit each other, it could have sparked off World War III like last week. All right, so anyway, I'm going to get into the next part. Okay, hi and welcome. All right, so we're about 3 days away from 2014 of the making of this video, and I'm just going to do a bit of a recap of where we are in the world and kind of the progression now. For those of you who might be tuning in for the very first time, basically what I've been doing, I guess, 2011 and on, is World War III updates. Basically what I've been doing is connecting dots for people, just so they can kind of get a bigger picture of the chess game that is being played out before our eyes. What I'm not doing is saying it's going to be at this date and time because of this, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that. That's the thing. But what I do say is that the recipe is there. We just have to turn on the stove. We are living in some pretty crazy times. So a little background of who I am. Well, I'm just a guy, and I've always been kind of fascinated with military history, military equipment, that type of thing. I don't have it. I'm not I've never served, but like that. I'm a Canadian, just for those of you who don't know. Most of you already know, but that follow my channel, but those of you who don't know. And what I do is try to kind of get people into the mind frame of what's really going on in the world. There's a couple of things that I'd like to point out first. Let's say you had cancer. If you had cancer, you would probably go to the doctor, as scary as it would be, and you would seek treatment. You would do everything tooth and nail to try to get rid of that cancer. You'd have to, summon up some courage, some bravery. You would definitely, have to endure some mental anguish on top of that, because it's a scary thing. So, if we're looking at it like that, well, nuclear weapons, on the other hand, exactly why would people, be so kind of blind to what's really going on in the world? Well, it's the sum of all fears, so to speak, right? It's the, if you look at every great war in the history, and there's been about probably 25,000 recorded wars in history, definitely not going to be the last, you know what I mean? But the difference now is, ever since the 1950s, late 1940s, 1945 and on, the world changed because warfare changed. Warfare now can go to the ultimate unthinkable level. Winner doesn't take all. It's M.A.D, mutually assured destruction. Whereas, World War One, World War Two, there are, so-called arguably winners and losers. I think in war everybody loses, but so it should be avoided at all cost. And the problem is we have a handful of people that dictate whether we should launch missiles at each other, which is